Vaush and Hasan having a bad day, having a very bad time because they've been banned.
Oh, no.
Been banned from Twitch. Oh, no, what happened? So this is the first one here being from Vaush. This is him saying, it's a massacre. And hello, Vaush video. Banned. Why? Reasons. Hateful slurs or symbols. What could it have been? Yeah. So if we go to the next one, we of course have Hasan, who is also banned. As you can see, streamer bans, noticing that he's banned. And his response was, yes, it is for exactly what you think it is. Anti-white racism for using the term cracker. And of course his followers are like, this is an outrage. How could this happen? Because it's the TOS. I mean, I'm not a fan of Western companies' TOS, but the rules should apply to everyone. And interestingly, of course, he's been banned from Twitch and the other one for anti-white racism, for using anti-white slurs.
Right.
And this does not apply on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Anti-black slurs, banned. Anti-Asian slurs, banned, all the rest of it. Doesn't matter if anyone was offended or not. Doesn't matter what the context was, apparently. That video can still be gone, or your channel deleted, or your account deleted. As we can even see with Carl, actually, who was insulting neo-Nazis by using their own rhetoric against them. But slurs were used, so banned. And if it happens to Hasan and Vaush and they're like, well, this is an injustice. Is it? Is it now? Right. Okay.
It's tyrannical and arbitrary on these platforms, isn't it?
Yeah, but the interesting thing about this on just a conversation about racial profanity is the I can't say the book's title, but because it's full of profanity, but there's a book written about profanity that I've mentioned before. It goes through the HSFN principle, as he calls it, is that, of course, the context is what matters with profanity. And not that this matters to any of the companies involved with their policies, but it'll come up as they try and defend themselves. So if we go to the next one, we, of course, have Ethan Klein, who decided to chip in. So he's friends with Hasan, has him on his show, all the rest of it. And he says, can I say cracker as a white man, or am I not allowed to say it as a Jew? What are the parameters? Well, there's a conversation we have, isn't it? Which is, are Jews white? And that determines whether or not you're allowed to say it. If your language is, I can say it because I'm white.
You know, when you're having these kinds of conversations, you've usually gone way too far down the wrong lane, I think.
You're sort of wasting your time.
Yeah.
But there's also the obvious point there that they're trying to argue, well, if I'm a black man, I'm allowed to say anti-black slurs. And it's like, no, not really. That's not how racial profanity works. The point of racial profanity and the reasons it's off limits in the West is because, well, it's the context that matters, not the word itself.
Right.
As you have with all other profanity. You know, Cartman saying the F word on South Park 12 times in a row, of course he's making the point that it doesn't harm anyone, but it's the context in which you use the term. So it could be anyone of any race using any racial slurs, but the context is what determines whether or not you should take it seriously, or if it's a joke, or if it's a political point, or anything else. That would be a sensible way of looking at it. Or we could just look at who's the race of the person saying it, which is retarded. Anyway, so moving on, so let's go to the next one, in which we have Hasan being upset. Absolutely insane that Twitch banned 2 of my mods for using the word cracker, so this is before, one of which is black and the other is brown. As if...
Yes.
As if... Okay, they're not even white, so they're not allowed to use the anti-white slurs if we were using Ethan's defense, but okay, whatever. Does Twitch actually believe cracker is a slur? Yes. Why wouldn't it be? It reaches all the parameters for racial profanity, and well, they used it. Even on your standard of them being white, they would be allowed to say it. Well, one of them's black and one of them's brown, as you say. So new, so banned. I mean, they're actually applying their rules consistently there. Do I agree with the rules? I mean, generally not, if I could help it. But whatever, that's their rules, and they're applying them in both ways, and that's what he's mad about. He's not mad about the fact they have these rules against, say, anti-black slurs.
No.
It is anti-white slurs that he's like, well, this isn't on. How dare you censor me? Anyway, so if we go to the next one, we have some a response from someone who said, absolutely deserved. White people who never owned a slave, let alone cracked a black person with a whip, definitely don't like being called slave owner. That's incredibly insulting and disgusting. And it's like, sure, okay, here's an individual who's offended by it. But again, the offence of this individual is not what justifies whether or not racial profanity is off limits.
Right.
It's the context in which it is said, whether the person is sincere. And do I believe sincerely the left hates white people? Come on, don't be silly. Of course they really do. How much more rhetoric do we have to go through about white privilege, white fragility, and all the rest of it?
We have covered it quite extensively.
Oh, God, but I don't want to waste our time on that. Anyway, but also the obvious point of just, well, you know, white person's never owned a slave. Name them. Name the white person who owns a slave. Can name me some black people who own slaves.
Really?
And trade slaves. Well, because we have the investigations, thankfully, from weirdly the mainstream media. So if we go to the next one here, we have an investigation into Libya's slave auctions, in which you can see people bought and sold for just whatever's going. They have an auction which they go $100, $200.
So we're talking about modern day slavery that's just ongoing. No one's talking about it. Everyone's busy talking about the slavery that happened across the Atlantic 200 years ago, and no one cares about Libya.
No. Instead, you have this collectivist guilt on white people, which is not how justice works at all, of course. You know, they have collectivist guilt in North Korea as well in the same way, which Big Shook, like the socialists believe in it. If you are guilty of plotting against the state, such as fighting for the South Koreans during the war, then your grandchildren will also be interned because it's collective guilt on the family there, which is, of course, nonsense. But, you know, Hasan using anti-white racial slurs for collective guilt against white people, again, doesn't make any sense, but doesn't care. Anyway, moving on, he learned nothing from that interaction, so he just responds with, shut your saltine?
I have never seen that word before.
Ass up, you fragile little B word. I was like, no, because he's got you. You've got nothing, have you, Hasan?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. Like, no, there is no collectivist guilt, and therefore racial slurs against a collective group on that basis is a racial slur by definition, and you've broken the terms, and you agree to these terms. You're just butthurt that it applies to white people as well, instead of just people who aren't white. Okay.
Well, these people in general have no moral consistency of their own, so why should we expect them to value moral consistency in someone like Twitter? They don't. They just want their team to win and other teams to lose.
Just power, all they care about. And also, you can see, like, as some of the previous tweets, he's mentioning it as well. Twitter does not enforce their rules consistently, and this is yet another example. We don't even have to look at Donald Trump and all the rest of it, even though that's blatantly obvious.
Yep.
But just a very simple one. Is calling someone racial slurs allowed? If no, well, then everyone who does it is banned, whether it's anti-white, anti-black, and it only goes one way. So we go to the next one as well, which is I thought was funny. So there's another interaction. So if we can click on the image first, just so we can give that a read. So this is a conversation going on. If it's derogatory, it's a effing slur. No one gets to decide what offends other people. To say cracker means slave owner. It is a pathetic excuse to be racist against whites. Do we call black males killers because they committed half of the murders in the United States in the last 30 years? Edgy boy. So someone responds with, I don't think you're too concerned about racism if you actually invoke the 1350 myth to whine about the word cracker, to which the person responds with a data table from the FBI of which groups are committing crimes, and black males commit, in that particular data table, I think that's 53.3%.
Looks like it.
Yeah, there you are. So myth, go to hell. You just data denier, I suppose. But again, the point being made is collective guilt something we can use in racial slurs and be okay with it? Well, if no, then it applies to everyone, not just black people or brown people, also white people or whatever other group of people you're bloody using. But I do love that it's a great example, though, and of course, Hasan is only concerned with one way, and as you can see, his response. This is a cracker, by the way, since many people wonder who's the type of person that is offended by the word, a word I've probably never used before this weekend. It's mother effers like this. It's like, it doesn't even matter if he's offended or not. Let's assume no one is.
Right.
I assume this is some suspicion that anti-white slurs have no power because it's power plus prejudice. I mean, he still has loads of prejudice, so it still equals a large number, but whatever.
He has quite a lot of power as well with the following he's got.
He does. And but even if no one was offended, if everyone's faking it, if everyone in the world who is white and is upset about being called a slave owner for collective guilt reasons is not offended by it, doesn't actually matter, because of course it is the context that matters. Does the individual actually hate the group that they are talking about? And if they don't, well, it's not really of interest. And do I believe the left hate the white people? Yes. Anyway, moving on.
I think these leftists certainly do. We're talking about the critical race theory leftists, and they absolutely have so many writings and statements that collected.
I mean, Hasan being a vocal advocate, defender of critical race theory in schools.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever it was brought up, he's just like, no, it's not happening. But also, if it does, that's good. Nom, nom, nom.
Yeah, say no more.
So, moving on. There's some other good stuff that I found funny. So this one is just the point in case you are a dunce and don't understand that the context matters. Penn and Teller can teach you this in a very simple clip in which he is like, I'm going to run over this little dog. I'm going to kill you, little buddy. I'm going to pull out your entrails and destroy you. And the dog's loving it. And then he just screams at the dog, I love you, dog. And the dog is terrified, of course.
Yeah.
But it's obviously just a metaphor for the point that it's not the words themselves that matter, but the context in which they are used. Anyway, so let's go to the next one, which is like more people being mad. So this is another leftist. So cracker being a bannable offense is so hilariously deranged, just placating the most fragile man-children in the world who themselves know they're just feigning outrage over nothing. Who else could we say that about? Imagine if someone got banned for saying the N-word, and the people who were so mad about it were insincere. then we would just let the person hang out, because even though they hated black people, it doesn't matter, because no, that's just man-children complaining. It's black fragility, I think we could label. No, we wouldn't be allowed to do that, would we? No, but we can do it with white fragility and so on and so forth. She continues, by the way, these are the same freaks who love having endless discussions about how it's actually okay for them to say the N-word in this or that circumstance, as they cower themselves in a warm blanket of victimhood at the first opportunity. Pathetic. On the pathetic...
There's a lot of projection going on here.
I love it. It's just like, okay, flip them around. Oh no, now we're having to call the police because I've just committed a non-crime hate incident or whatever else. But fantastic. But also the absurdity of being like, how dare you have a discussion about racial profanity when it's okay? Why not? Lunatic. And of course the answer is always not because power or collective guilt, but instead the individual person saying it and what is the context in which it is used.
Yeah.
Anyway, also it's also a point that just no one cares about the words themselves. Just no one ever cares about the words, because that's not how profanity works. No one is offended by the abstract F word.
I disagree, actually. I would say that the original profanity, when we were a very sort of Christian, moralistic society, even just saying a simple word like damn or bloody, regardless of the context, would be seen as a moral outrage. Like, my gran would certainly not be happy with that. She wouldn't stand that at her dinner table. But we have evolved to a stage where we do use those in everyday life.
I don't agree, because it could certainly be used on, let's say, the... if we're talking in that period, the uncivilized tribes of the world that have gone and killed a British garrison.
Not around my grand's dinner table, it couldn't.
Maybe your grand's dinner table was different, but I would certainly describe it with the Ottomans or anyone else. Anyway, so let's move on. So that's some other whining from Hasan here, who, let's be honest, he's probably going to get it back like that. And if not, then he'll have everything else protected. Apparently he's going on Ethan Klein's podcast or whatever. To get more Cheetos down his throat and some more money in his bank account. A Reddit moment brought to you by a Cracker Discourse, where this Redditor says my anti-white racism would make the most racist person in the 1900s. You know, when Hitler was alive along with Jim Crow laws in the South. He's talking about some Reddit post in which someone's making the point that he's legitimately mad because he can't insult someone for the color of their skin.
Yeah.
That's all he's mad about. I can't say cracker. Damn. Like, it's not that, no, I've got some nuanced point, I've got something. No, he just wants to sit there and insult white people. And I think he legitimately does hate white people from his proposal of critical race theory being allowed. And then this person ending it with, dude would 100% be the most racist person ever in the 1900s. Lamau, he gets a lot of pleasure out of insulting people for 8 hours straight every day and defending racial slurs, only because society hasn't said that they're bad yet.
That's true. That's true. He is one of the most professional racists out there by that measure.
And has no standards, except that, well, society says it's bad or not bad. And it's like, that's not a standard for using these kind of things. But whatever. The context is important. Does the person unironically hate the group they're talking about? And in the case of the left, yes. Anyway, there's also, obviously, you know, Destiny versus Richard Spencer using the M-word. I mean, which one of these is more legitimate?
Right.
Like, not going to waste my time with that. So we go to Destiny's response, because I mentioned him, who's loving it, by the way, because, of course, Destiny is apparently the inspiration for Vaush to start his stuff. And now I think they hate each other because Vaush is a communist and Destiny's not. And, well, of course, they hate each other for that. So someone's saying in here, the funny thing is that cracker is short for whip cracker. Being called out for being a cracker of whips on oppressed people's backs does not make the cracker oppressed. Boo-hoo, the colonizer is being called a colonizer. How awful and uncomfortable for them. And Destiny's response, white people in the US today don't own slaves or colonize, though.
Yeah, I can't think of the last time I picked up a whip. I don't know if it was ever.
Let's just name the person. And again, it's just collective guilt. And then, you know, then the example comes back of the spicy chat before saying, should we just call black males killers? Why not? You know, you can actually point to a real world data figure there because it's collective guilt instead of individual.
Right, and they're both ridiculous ideas.
Yeah, we don't believe in collective guilt. Otherwise, you'd be a socialist hellhole. Anyway, so moving on, Vaush fans also took it well that Destiny was like, well, get screwed, bye. And this is a individual Vaush fan, presumably, with all his Marxist regalia, studying Marxism, hammer and sickle there. She, her, lesbian, trans woman. You're a snow roach, KKK cracker, albino ape, tighty whitey, and honky. Delete your account if you're gonna whine about these while defending saying the N-word racist piece of S. I was like, learn nothing. None of the words are important. What is important is the context.
That's a perfect NPC response right there.
Yeah. Anyway, there's also a Big Joel, the online leftist, who kind of pissed his pant, and we'll go to him because I thought that was funny as well. So you can see Destiny making the point that racism for everyone else is a pretty simple game. Just do you hate the person based on the race? You insult them based on the race? Well, that'll be racism then.
Exactly.
And then the pro-cracker mental gymnastics, as he listed there. Snow roaches were slaves. And anyway, good meme. And then Big Joel is very upset about this, and him responding with, "Wait, I'm sorry, is there even a kind of person who's offended by the word cracker?" And again, it's not the word that's important, it's the context of the word. But either way, that's not how Twitch.com works, is it?
Yep.
Like, do we even need mental gymnastics to defend calling white people white in a spicy way? That's how we're referring to it. Okay. I'll use that in future.
I wasn't racially abusing him, Governor. I was just calling him black in a spicy way.
The courts in this country would sentence you to prison or a fine, whichever's greater. We need to have a conversation about what makes words a slur. Lol. Okay, well, you could have that conversation, and you can pick up that chap's book I've mentioned about the HSFN principle.
I don't know what that is or what that means.
They're all different profanities, and it's.
Well, I'm afraid my lexicon of racial profanities isn't advanced enough to decode.
Oh, well, they're not all racial. That's the point. I'll lay it out because I'm not given enough context.
Sure.
So you have religious profanity, sexual profanity, profanity that's about human excretions, and then racial profanity. And his point in the book is these seem to be the 4 distinct categories of all the languages around the world.
Right, yes, this does sound familiar.
But the other interesting point is that different cultures value different groups more or less.
Of course.
And in the West, in the current era, we value racial profanity the most, and other countries don't, obviously. India comes to mind.
Yeah, but 100 years ago, religious profanity would have been the most.
Exactly, but there's a shift. But there's also an obvious difference between English and German, for example, that they value excretion profanity in a way we don't.
Really?
Scheiße. Anyway, so on and so forth. But you go and read that in your own time. But let's go on to the next thing, which I forgot what it is. Oh, yeah, it's Big Joel coming out and saying it, which is, in the end, I guess I do think white people should simply be more okay with being teased for their whiteness than other kinds of people.
Ding, 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 we have a racist.
We have it. We have it, folks. We've got the admission, finally. It's like, I just want to call white people cracker. Why? Because I don't like white people. Thank you. Thank you, Big Joel. Thank you, Hasan. Thank you, Vaush. Thank you for making the point, which is that, it is the person and the way they're saying it. And if they do genuinely believe that they should just be able to call white people cracker because they don't like them, well, that'll be racism. That's a racism. You've done one. Anyway, so we're going to the next one here, which is omni-liberal, getting Destiny, obviously getting the point. There it is, finally. Was it so hard to say? Apparently it wasn't. Anyway, so it's going to Hasan, also defending racial slurs before. So I'm not familiar with this one, but this also popped back up because, of course, anyone who thinks Gusano is a racial slur has to start calling it G-word going forward.
Never heard of it.
And this was him because he'd used it. And it's a word that apparently refers to the Cuban exiles. So Castro first used it. It means worm to refer to counter-revolutionaries. So the people who didn't want to be killed and have their property stolen. And that includes, of course, all of them are now in Florida, waiting to return home one day, which, they're not going to, are they? Because it's still a communist hellhole. And they've been there so long, they are not just a political group, but an ethnic group. And therefore, there is also a racial slur and is classified as such, apparently. So doesn't care about that either. So, and I thought we'd just end on, in case you were doubting our sincerity about the fact that the left hates white people, well, let's just go to a anti-white racist and see what she thinks. So just the last one here, you may recognize her. I will never stop marveling at how white people have ruined the world and this planet. Stays up on twitter.com. Replace that with black. You'd be banned.
Any other racial group. You could reproduce a lot of very spicy historical movements, couldn't you? Yeah.
You may remember her. I don't know if you do, but she did an interview with Carl for about 15 minutes before getting butthurt and leaving.
I didn't know that.
Carl brought up the point that most black Africans who were sold to white Europeans that were then taken to Brazil, the Caribbean, and the United States was sold to them by who?
Yeah.
Not white people.
Yeah.
Sold to them by black people. And then she had a Windows XP meltdown and left. Anyway, but there's that. There's them getting banned for anti-white racism, and quite frankly, it's an application of the rules. You don't have to like the rules, but they are what they are.
The rules are the rules.
Yeah, do it.
Sometimes, except when they aren't.
And I do not care about these people because they do not care on any inch of anyone else getting banned ever, so I have no idea why we should care about them getting banned on this. Same with Novara Media, when they got banned. I don't know if you remember that.
Yep.
They were like, yes, but my free speech. And it was like, yes, we've all been saying this for years. And you told us to get stuff counter-revolutionary. If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to check out all the premium content we have on the site.
Yeah, we've got loads, and it's all really, really good. So why should you sign up? Why should you support us? Well, because you're going to get stuff there that you don't get anywhere else. Like the cultural series that John and I have started, which is talking about the politics and philosophy of science fiction. Because everyone was demanding it. And John was like, let's do Star Trek. Okay. Everyone loved it. And they were like, okay, let's do Stargate. And he had never watched this. And so he's like, is this military propaganda? I'm like, no, it's not military propaganda. It's basically a soap opera set in a science fiction setting. But anyway, we've got really great stuff like that. And then we've obviously got our articles, which have got audio narration for the Silver Tier members, such as this Anti-Civilizational Environmentalism by Hugo, as in, look at them. They want to actually erase civilization. And they're actually not very shy about saying it at this point. But anyway, moving on, we've got interviews with absolute mad lads, such as Miles of Kabul that you did.
Good guy. Did nothing wrong.
Ironically. This is the guy who had to be evacuated out of Afghanistan because he was on holiday there. Basically.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, there's loads of criticisms of him that are out there, but we just sat down and went through them, and none of them hold water. So
yeah, he seemed like a really nice guy, and he's got a really placid temperament. Like, he's not like some sort of raging lunatic or anything. I was really surprised. I expected him to be mad. But anyway, we've also got loads of regular content, such as our book clubs. This is the Communist Manifesto that Thomas and I recently did. It's very interesting, if you're not a communist, to read the Communist Manifesto, because there are some telltale signs of conservatism that are embedded within it. I know that sounds hard to believe, but trust me, it's in there. Anyway, moving on, we've got our spicy podcast that we can't put on YouTube. Can't carry on talking about that on this channel. Anyway, we've also got the Contemplations, this one that you did with Josh, talking about Parliament.
Yeah, so
Does it work?
This is just an in-depth look at the system and where it comes from and why it's a bit of a meme. As mentioned, like the House of Lords. Why does that exist? It's literally just because like the lords, the burgesses and the priests and whatnot didn't want to sit with all the barons and whatnot. So they just separated into two groups in the king's chamber, and then that became the two houses.
And that's how the system works.
Yes.
Amazing. And finally, we've got the epochs that Bo and I do every week. This was an amazing one. This was a Life of General Gordon. And I'm really glad I get to juxtapose this with the interview with Miles of Kabul, because you can see that these two characters, these two people, are cut from exactly the same cloth. Like, deeply Christian, like crazy adventurers, love living a life of danger. And the life of Gordon of Khartoum is honestly a real thrill a minute. Right now, I didn't know anything about him either, so Bo's taking me through what happened, and I was just wrapped. I had such a great time. But anyway, there we go.
Now, if you want to check us out on Alt Tech, be sure to follow us on Getter. So there's Getter.com, and the @ there being lotuseaters_com, because lotuseaters.com didn't work on the @ but it is the name.
You can't put dots in the @ names.
But anyway, go and follow us on Getter. And if you'd like to get access to all that premium content or all the free stuff we also have on the website, go to lotuseaters.com and subscribe. Thank you.